Hi, my name is Sonya Martin, and today I'm going to be talking to you about promoting inclusive practices to ensure equitable, quality education in informal science learning environments. I'm a professor at Seoul National University here in Korea, and I conduct research on equity issues in science education. My studies focus on understanding the barriers to access and achievement that marginalized students experience in both formal and informal science learning environments. I'm happy to have a chance to participate in this symposium with a focus on equity. My talk today will be presented in English and will include English and Korean language subtitles. I invited Ji Young Yu, who is a science educator from Daegu University, to provide sign language interpretation in Korean for this presentation. This presentation speaks to UN Sustainable Development Goal number 4 by addressing the question, is an inclusive, equitable science education possible? I intend to answer this question by first sharing some examples of the ways in which informal education centers are working towards meeting this goal. And I will conclude by sharing strategies that can support museum educators to also begin working towards meeting this goal. In the science education literature, many studies have shown that girls, culturally and linguistically diverse students, students with special education needs, and students from families with limited income face more barriers to accessing quality science learning experience. They have fewer role models, and they are challenged by internalized negative perceptions of themselves as science learners. However, recent advances in technology, changes in educational policy, and a general shift in how people view and value difference is having a positive impact in some informal education settings. In the next few slides, I will highlight some of the changes that are making museums more inclusive for a wider range of visitors. A critical first step to making museums inclusive is to make them accessible. Today, it is becoming more common for museums to provide website information about accessibility features offered. Making information available for users to plan for their visit, both before and during, is essential for ensuring positive experiences. This example from the website of the Science Museum of Virginia in the United States displays content that is not only clear, but the museum has also carefully tailored the information they share specifically for individual groups. Providing visitor-specific information really demonstrates understanding that all visitors have different concerns. By clicking on each category, visitors can easily identify what programs or assistive technologies are available for their individual needs. This level of detail and organization demonstrates that the museum educators here understand that visitors have different needs that cannot be effectively addressed by sharing simple, generic accessibility content. The Science Museum of London and the Boston Museum of Science both provide explicit information about upcoming events and provide contacts for learning more from a dedicated museum accessibility staff member who is trained specifically to guide and support visitors to be able to enjoy the same benefits as all visitors. Another example includes educational programming designed to support different groups of learners to access both regular and special exhibits. Examples from the Smithsonian American Art Museum include the gallery talks presented by ASL interpreters who provide voice information and observations from both hearing and deaf visitors, which allows hearing and deaf audiences to discover art together. A second example includes the online gallery talks made available in Korean Sign Language at national museums in collaboration with the government-sponsored Korean Sign Language Dictionary Project. KSL interpreted lectures about famous exhibits are recorded and made available to access online. In this example, an interpreter is describing the science behind Korea's famous turtle boats. The America in Sight program offers a unique opportunity for blind and low vision visitors to join tours led by trained docents who use rich verbal description about the colors, smells, emotions, and even sounds and music inspired by different paintings and artworks. These tours include a sensory experience in which visitors are encouraged to get close to paintings for detailed viewing and to touch replicas of paintings and sculptures to learn about the materials used by artists. These tours provide an important pathway for appreciating art for blind and low vision patrons who generally experience museums with strict no-touch policies. The Mutter Museum of the College of Physicians in Philadelphia has programming for both blind and low vision visitors and for deaf and hard of hearing visitors. The programs are scheduled throughout the year, and on several dates, special programming is available where the museum is closed to the general public, so these visitors can access the museum without the noise that may make it difficult for them to really enjoy the exhibits. The museum also offers in-person and pre-recorded sign language tours that can be accessed online. For more than 15 years now, the Museum of Modern Art in New York has offered programming for seniors, especially those with dementia and Alzheimer's, that are designed to offer an experience for visitors to both elicit old memories and to make new memories with their caregivers. These programs employ senior citizens as docents, some of whom also use wheelchairs and can serve both as mobility guides and museum educators. Currently, more than 2.6 million Korean citizens have some form of disability. And as more than half of those people are over the age of 60, this number is expected to continue to rise as Korea is an aging society. Many seniors will develop mobility issues, and some seniors will develop dementia. Programming seeking to engage seniors in informal learning environments can play a critical role in supporting lifelong learning for an aging population. Some programming in science museums can be particularly difficult for everyone to access. As a science educator and interpreter, Ms. Yu has witnessed how inaccessible planetariums can be for deaf visitors, because when the planetariums become dark, it's difficult for deaf and hard of hearing visitors to view both an interpreter and the night sky at the same time. However, advances in augmented reality offer new opportunities. Smart gaze glasses make it possible for visitors to view synchronized sign language interpretation or subtitles that are superimposed on their glasses, so users can view the night sky and simultaneously access the same content as hearing visitors. New smart caption glasses that superimpose subtitles generated from live action performances can allow visitors to watch live science demonstrations with subtitles. And there are various options for PDA and smartphone apps. Handheld devices provide on-demand interpretation for deaf visitors in different languages. There are several examples of these programs, including Signly, Musei, and more. As awareness about autism increases, more museums are offering resources necessary for people and families to plan for a positive learning experience. The Victoria and Albert Museum of Children in London has prepared pre-visit booklets with cards that can be used to describe how to travel to the museum, what to see and do upon arrival, and how to return home after a visit. The museum also offers Sense family packs, which patrons can borrow during their visit. These packs contain a variety of resources to support the visitors with autism to enjoy the museum experience. Resources such as these acknowledge that visiting the museum for some guests requires more than just website information about the location of elevators and bathrooms. These tools are symbolic of the inclusive vision the museum has for welcoming all people. Digital apps from companies like Infiniteach are increasing accessibility to museums for people with autism by providing visual tap and talk icons that allow for nonverbal two-way communication, so visitors can ask and answer questions with just the touch of a button. These apps also allow visitors to plan activities in advance and create a visual schedule that can be marked off as each activity is completed. Finally, these apps offer sensory maps to help users identify and be alerted about places within the museum that may have bright stimuli or loud sounds. This can allow users to avoid sensory triggery points and even to locate quiet spaces when needed. There are already many examples of museums that are expanding access to quality science learning experiences for a broad range of visitors. In the next few slides, I discuss how museums and science centers can be leaders in promoting diversity and equity in education. The most critical component necessary for making an inclusive, equitable, quality science education possible is a commitment to the tenets of inclusive education and to multicultural science education. These ideas inform my research and every aspect of my work with teachers and students. My commitment to being inclusive is what led me to invite Ms. Yu to provide sign language interpretation for my presentation. Inclusive education is about trying to minimize barriers and assuring participation for all. Multicultural science education is about understanding that all people can learn science and that it's worthwhile for everyone to learn and participate in science. Making a commitment to be an agent for change is the first step. Rather than trying to adapt existing programs, museums need to design programs with diverse communities in mind. Museums need to understand and make connections between learners, families, schools, and the community, and to develop programs that identify and support diverse community members to serve as leaders within the museum. And museums need to better support staff and educators to meet the needs of all visitors. A practical way to achieve this is to develop relationships with community organizations to engage community partners in co-designing, implementing, and evaluating museum programming. By building partnerships with families, museums can develop programs that engage families and caregivers in authentic ways and that encourage individuals, family members, and caregivers to provide feedback that help museums address barriers that prevent visitors from regularly accessing the exhibits. Museums can help to challenge societal notions about who can do science by supporting diverse community members who can serve as docents, educators, and role models within the museum. While studies have shown it may be possible for museums to minimize barriers to physically accessing museums, it can be more difficult to overcome the negative beliefs and perceptions held by museum staff and educators about the need to make museums accessible to all people. The strategies mentioned previously all require that educators have necessary awareness and training about how to work with diverse populations. Museum staff need support and leadership to build a commitment to inclusiveness, and they need to learn how to be more effective in their interactions with diverse visitors. To meet these goals, it's critical that museums engage access advisors. These are people who serve as real representatives from targeted audiences who can help identify challenges and co-design training programs to better equip docents and museum staff to be able to serve the needs of a diverse public. In Korea, for example, there are many different organizations that museums can partner with to improve educational opportunities for people of a wider range. There are organizations for people who are blind and low vision, deaf and hard of hearing, people with learning disabilities, people with reduced mobility, and there are many different advocacy groups for senior citizens. They can all collaborate with museum educators to transform museums into inclusive learning spaces. For museums to be seen as and to function as belonging to all of us, we have to decrease barriers to accessibility and increase advocacy for inclusive science learning. This can only be done by integrating and developing structures that allow for meaningful participation by museum staff with the visiting public. To build relationships between museum staff and community members, you have to provide ongoing professional development for your educators. I want to thank you for listening, and I look forward to our shared discussions. On this slide, you can find access to some references. I will end my presentation here with some questions for general discussion about how all of you are working to expand access to quality science learning experiences in your own contexts. I'm eager to hear some examples from you and to learn what role you think that museums can and should play in promoting inclusive education. I'm especially interested to hear about any partnerships that you may have established with professionals and individuals representing different communities that are helping to transform programming for your visitors. Thank you.